Why empires always fall the same way your government just crossed a line that destroyed every empire in history. $33 trillion in debt. That's not the scary part. The scary part is we've seen this exact number before. 3 times. Rome, Spain, Britain, all dead. And the pattern that killed them is happening right now. Let me show you something nobody talks about. In 1945, America's debt hit 119% of our economy. We were fighting Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan at the same time. By 2023, our debt hit 123%. We crossed the World War II line. But here's the twist. We're not fighting that war. We're not fighting any war that big. So where did the money go? This is the pattern. This is how it starts. And history shows us exactly how it ends. 301 AD. Rome is the most powerful empire on Earth. Soldiers control 3 continents. Roads connect 50 million people. The empire has stood for 1,000 years. Nobody sees the collapse coming. But Emperor Diocletian sees something terrifying in the markets. Bread costs triple what it did last year. A pound of pork that cost 4 coins now costs 12. Soldiers are deserting because their paychecks buy half the food they used to. The empire is breaking, and the government caused it. Here's what they did. For decades, Rome fought wars on 2 fronts. Persia in the east, Germanic tribes in the north. Wars cost money. Rome didn't have money, so they did what every government does when they run out. They printed more. Not paper money. Romans used silver coins called denarii. In 64 AD, under Emperor Nero, each coin was 94% pure silver. By 270 AD, that same coin was 5% silver. They melted down the money, mixed in cheap metal, stamped the emperor's face on it, and pretended nothing changed. Soldiers got paid the same number of coins, but those coins were worthless. A soldier in 270 AD held a bag of fake money and starved. By 300 AD, Roman legions were abandoning their posts, not because they were cowards, because they couldn't feed their families. Diocletian's solution changed everything. He made inflation illegal. The edict on maximum prices set caps on over 1,000 goods. A pound of pork, 12 denarii maximum. A farm worker's daily wage, 25 denarii maximum. A lawyer's fee, 1,000 denarii maximum. The penalty for charging more? Execution. They killed bakers for charging too much for bread. It failed in weeks. Farmers stopped bringing food to cities because every sale lost them money. Markets emptied. People hoarded. The black market exploded. Within a generation, the edict was abandoned. But the damage was permanent. Rome destroyed trust in its own money. And here's the number that explains everything. By 300 AD, military spending consumed 70% of Rome's entire budget. 70%, just to keep the borders safe. That left 30% for everything else. Roads, aqueducts, food, government. When 3/4 of your money goes to defense, you can't maintain what you built. The barbarian invasions didn't destroy Rome. Rome destroyed Rome. The invasions just walked through the door Rome left open. Fast forward to 1492. Spain kicks out the last Muslim kingdom. Columbus sails west, and the Spanish Empire begins. By 1550, Spain controls more territory than Rome ever did. Silver floods in from mines in Bolivia and Mexico. The Spanish real becomes the world's reserve currency. If you want to trade across continents, you use Spanish silver. Spain is unstoppable. Then comes King Philip II. Philip fights everybody. The Dutch, the English, the Ottomans, the French, Protestant rebels, Catholic rebels. War after war after war, all paid for with New World silver. In 1557, 21 years into his reign, Philip calls a meeting with his bankers. He tells them 3 words that break the global economy. We can't pay. Spain declares bankruptcy. The bankers panic. Spain restructures everything, issues new bonds, promises to pay later. Crisis averted. Everyone moves on. 3 years later, Spain declares bankruptcy again. Then again in 1575, and 1596, and 1607, and 1627, and 1647, and 1652. 7 bankruptcies in 95 years. Here's the insane part. The silver keeps flowing. Shipload after shipload from the Americas. But now the silver goes straight to creditors before it even reaches Spain. The empire isn't building new things. It's working to pay off old loans. Spain is trapped in the debt cycle. By 1640, the trap snaps shut. Catalonia rebels. Portugal rebels. Spanish soldiers in Flanders mutiny because they haven't been paid in months. The empire is bleeding cash to creditors while territories break away. The critical number: debt payments consumed 40% of Spanish revenue. When you spend almost half your income just on interest, you can't invest in the future. You can't build. You can't innovate. You're stuck. Spain keeps fighting wars, but now they're losing. By 1700, Spain is a second-rate power. The empire didn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It bled out over a century of debt nobody could escape. Britain watched Spain die of debt. Britain learned nothing. 1815, Britain defeats Napoleon at Waterloo. The cost? National debt hits 226% of the economy, the highest in British history. But Britain has a plan. They pay it down. Slowly, painfully, but they pay it down. By 1914, British debt falls to 30%. Manageable, sustainable, fixed. August 1914, World War I starts. The British government expects 6 months of fighting, maybe a year. They borrow accordingly. For years and 900,000 British dead later, the war ends. British debt, 135% of the economy. Painful but survivable. Britain tightens its belt and starts paying down the debt again. By 1939, they've made progress. Debt is back to 120%. Then Hitler invades Poland. 6 years later, World War II ends. British debt hits 259% of GDP, the highest level ever recorded by any major economy at that time. Britain won the war. Britain lost the empire. India declares independence in 1947. Britain abandons Palestine in 1948. Egypt nationalizes the Suez Canal in 1956, and Britain can't stop them. Not because Britain lacks weapons, because Britain lacks money. Here's what victory looked like. In 1950, 5 years after defeating Nazi Germany, British citizens still used ration cards. Meat, sugar, butter, all rationed until 1954. Why? Because every pound Britain earned went to creditors. Britain owed America. Britain owed Canada. Britain owed its own citizens who bought war bonds. The debts had to be paid. Everything else was secondary. By 1960, Britain is a medium power. By 1970, Britain is begging the International Monetary Fund for a bailout. The pound sterling, once the global reserve currency, is now just another currency. America, in 1945, takes over as the global superpower. The dollar replaces the pound. American bases replace British colonies. Britain's debt crisis becomes America's opportunity. Now watch this. America in 1945, debt at 119% of GDP, the highest in American history. Everyone expects decades of austerity, just like Britain. But something remarkable happens. By 1970, 25 years later, U.S. debt falls to 35%. America pays down 2/3 of the war debt in a single generation. How? The American economy explodes. Veterans come home, go to college on the GI Bill, buy houses with subsidized mortgages, have kids. The baby boom creates massive consumer demand. American factories, untouched by bombs while European and Japanese factories are rubble, produce everything the world needs. Cars, appliances, steel, electronics. The world buys American. But here's what else happens. The top tax rate in 1945 is 94%. Corporations pay. The wealthy pay. Everyone pays. It's not popular. It's not fun. But the debt gets paid. By 1970, America can't afford to cut taxes because the war debt is gone. This is where the story should end. America learned the lesson. We paid our debts. We stayed disciplined. We avoided the trap. Except we didn't. U.S. debt in 2000, 54% of GDP. Manageable. Safe. Then September 11th happens. The war on terror begins. Afghanistan. Iraq. 20 years of war. But here's the difference. These wars go on the credit card. Taxes don't go up. Bonds get sold. Future generations will pay. 2008. The financial crisis hits. Banks collapse. The government steps in. Bailouts. Stimulus. Necessary, maybe. Expensive, definitely. Debt jumps to 83% by 2010. Then 2020. The pandemic. The economy shuts down. The government sends checks. $3 trillion in pandemic relief. Debt explodes to 127%. We just crossed the World War II line. And unlike 1945, we're not paying it down. In 2023, the United States runs a $2 trillion deficit. Not the debt, the deficit, the amount we added in 1 year. And projections show deficits of 1 to 2 trillion every year forever. Here's why this is a crisis. Interest rates. For decades, America borrowed at near zero rates. The government could borrow almost for free. Then inflation came back. The Federal Reserve raised rates. Suddenly borrowing costs real money. In 2020, the average interest rate on U.S. debt was 1.6%. By 2023, it hit 2.9%. That sounds small, but when you owe $33 trillion, every percentage point costs $330 billion per year. Do the math. If rates go to 4%, the historical average, interest payments hit $1.3 trillion annually. That's more than defense and Medicare combined. And you can't not pay it. You can cut education. You can cut infrastructure. You can cut research. You cannot cut interest payments. Default means the end of the dollar as the global currency. Default means chaos. Right now, America pays over $650 billion per year just in interest. Not paying down debt, just interest. That's more than education, transportation, and agriculture combined. By 2030, interest payments will exceed defense spending. We'll spend more money on old debt than protecting the country. This is the trap. This is how empires spiral. So what are the options? 3 paths. None of them good. Option 1, pay it down. Cut spending dramatically. Raise taxes significantly. Run surpluses for decades. Britain tried this after World War I. It worked, kind of, but it required austerity that tore the country apart. Cuts to everything. Social programs, defense, infrastructure, and it took decades. America could do this. The political will doesn't exist. Nobody wants to be the politician who cuts Medicare and raises taxes. Nobody gets reelected on austerity. Option 2, grow out of it. If the economy grows faster than the debt shrinks over time. This worked after World War II, but it required unique circumstances. American manufacturing dominance, destroyed competition, population growth, rising productivity. Those factors don't exist anymore. American manufacturing competes with China. The population is aging. Productivity growth has slowed. Growth alone won't solve this. Option 3, inflate it away. Let inflation run higher than interest rates. The debt stays the same in dollars, but shrinks in real terms. Your mortgage is easier to pay when your salary doubles. Same principle. This is what Rome did. This is what caused Spain's bankruptcies. This is what Britain tried in the 1970s. It works, technically, but it destroys savings. It punishes creditors. It creates economic chaos. And if you're the reserve currency, it risks everything. Countries hold dollars because dollars are stable. If dollars inflate at 5 or 10% per year, countries look for alternatives. China's yuan, a basket of currencies, maybe digital currencies. The dollar's reserve status isn't guaranteed forever. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The United States is not Rome. We're not Spain. We're not Britain, but we're following the same pattern. Wartime borrowing during peacetime, rising interest costs, political paralysis, and the belief that this time is different. Maybe it is different. America has the largest economy, the strongest military, the reserve currency. Those are massive advantages. But Rome had advantages too. Spain had the silver. Britain had the navy. Advantages delay the reckoning. They don't prevent it. The Congressional Budget Office projects that by 2053, U.S. debt will hit 181% of GDP under current policies. That's not worst case. That's the baseline. That's what happens if nothing major goes wrong. No financial crisis. No pandemic. No war. But here's what history teaches us. Something always goes wrong. And when it does, you need the ability to borrow. If you're already at 180% debt, what do you do when the next crisis hits? Go to 250%, 300%. At some point, creditors say no, or they say yes, but at 15% interest instead of 3. That's when debt spirals become debt crises. There's one more thing. In every case, Rome, Spain, Britain, the citizens didn't see it coming. Life looked normal. Bread was in stores. Ships sailed. Soldiers marched. Then suddenly, they didn't. The collapse looks gradual from a distance and instant up close. Decades of mounting debt, then a single crisis that reveals the whole structure was unstable. Rome looked invincible in 300 AD, collapsed by 476 AD. Spain looked unstoppable in 1580, irrelevant by 1700. Britain ruled a quarter of the planet in 1920, asking for bailouts by 1970. The United States is not collapsing. Not today, not next year, maybe not for decades. But the warning signs are flashing. Debt at World War II levels without a World War II threat. Interest payments consuming more of the budget every year. Political paralysis preventing solutions. And the assumption that American exceptionalism means the rules don't apply. Rome thought they were exceptional. They called their city eternal. Spain thought the silver would never run out. Britain thought the sun would never set on their empire. Every empire thinks it's different. Every empire thinks it's special. Every empire thinks the rules don't apply. And every empire that thought that way is now a history lesson. Empires don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they can't pay their debts. And debt, unlike enemies, can't be defeated with weapons. The question isn't whether America will face a reckoning. The question is when, and whether we'll see it coming. History says we won't, but history also shows something else. The empires that acted early, that made hard choices before they had to, those empires survived. The ones that waited, that assumed things would work out, that borrowed just a little more to get through the next crisis. Those empires are museums now. $33 trillion, 123% of GDP. Interest payments that will soon exceed defense spending. The same pattern that killed Rome. The same pattern that bankrupted Spain 7 times. The same pattern that ended the British Empire. The pattern is all there. The only question is what happens next. Because history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, it's rhyming louder than it has in 80 years.